What we need to build instead is a direct connection between English words and the real world, between English words and your experiences, your senses, your emotions. We need to bypass the native language layer completely and build English meanings that are rich, personal, and vivid. How do we do this? Through a technique I call experiential vocabulary building. Instead of learning a new word by finding its translation, you learn it by associating it with an experience. Let us say you are learning the word exhausted. Instead of writing down that it means tired in your language, I want you to close your eyes and remember a moment when you felt truly, deeply exhausted. Maybe it was after a very long day of travel. Maybe it was after a difficult exam. Maybe it was after carrying heavy boxes up several flights of stairs. Really feel that memory. Feel the weight in your limbs, the cloudiness in your mind, the desperate desire to just lie down, and then attach the word exhausted to that physical, emotional memory. Let the word live in that experience. Let it mean that feeling, not a word in your language, but the actual visceral sensation of being spent and depleted. When you learn vocabulary this way, something remarkable happens. The next time you want to express that feeling, you do not need to go through your native language. The feeling itself will trigger the English word, because you have built a direct neural connection between the two. That is what it means to truly own a word in English. You can do this with every type of vocabulary. For concrete nouns, objects you can see and touch, try to always visualize the actual object, never the word for it in your native language. See a chair, say chair. See sunlight coming through a window, say sunlight. Create strong visual associations. Make them specific. Not just a chair, but that old wooden chair in your grandmother's kitchen. The more specific and personal the image, the stronger the neural connection. For abstract words, things like freedom, justice, ambition, you need to go one step further and build a personal narrative. What does freedom feel like to you? When did you feel it? Though attach the English word to that personal experience of the concept. Do not define freedom. Feel freedom and call it by its English name. For action words, verbs, the best approach is to physically do the action or at least vividly imagine doing it. The word stride is not just a synonym for walk. It is a specific way of walking, confident, purposeful, with long steps. Feel yourself striding, embody the word, and then that word will always arrive in your mind, complete and alive, not as an abstraction, but as an action you understand in your body. For emotional vocabulary, words like melancholy, exhilarated, anxious, dig into your emotional memory. Remember specific moments. Let yourself feel the edge of that emotion and then name it in English. Over time, your emotions themselves will start to reach for English words first, because those words have become associated with the actual emotional experience. Now, let us talk about the power of context over memorization. Most language learners try to memorize vocabulary lists. They sit with a flashcard and drill the word and its translation over and over. And this is one of the least effective ways to build a native mental lexicon for several reasons. First, it reinforces the translation habit. Second, it teaches the word in isolation, divorced from any context. And third, it gives the word no emotional weight, nothing to hook it to in your memory. Words that stick are words that you have encountered in meaningful contexts. When you hear a new word in a movie during a scene that moved you, when you read a new word in a book during a passage that made you stop and think, when you encounter a new word in a conversation with someone you care about, those words stick. They stick because they are wrapped in emotion, in context, in story. So one of the best things you can do for your vocabulary is to read a lot of English fiction, novels, short stories, narrative nonfiction, because in fiction, words live in scenes. They are spoken by characters in emotional moments. They are attached to images and sensations and consequences. And your brain, which is fundamentally a narrative machine, learns them and keeps them. Another powerful technique is something I call the English to English dictionary habit. From this point forward, when you want to look up the meaning of an English word, I want you to look it up in an English dictionary, not a bilingual one. Read the English definition. Read the example sentences. And notice how the word is used in different contexts. Yes, this is harder. Yes, it takes more time. But every time you do it, you are strengthening the English-only neural network in your brain. You are building a web of English meaning that does not depend on any other language. Over time, as you build this web, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to feel the nuances between words. You feel the difference between happy and delighted and content and ecstatic. You feel the difference between look and glance and stare and gaze. These are not distinctions that a bilingual dictionary can give you. They are distinctions that you build through exposure, through context, through living inside the language. And when you have them, your English becomes not just correct, but beautiful, not just functional, but alive. Chapter 4: The Power of Chunks. How native speakers really think. Here is something that linguistics research has revealed that completely transformed how language teachers and scientists think about fluency. Native speakers do not build sentences word by word. Read that again. Native speakers do not build sentences word by word. If you watch what happens in the brain when a native speaker talks, you do not see individual words being selected and arranged like pieces of a puzzle. What you see is something much more interesting. You see large chunks of language being retrieved and deployed as single units. Phrases, expressions, collocations, fixed patterns, these are stored and accessed as wholes, not as collections of individual words. When a native English speaker says, "as a matter of fact," they are not selecting as, then a, then matter, then of, then fact, and arranging them according to grammar rules. They are retrieving the entire chunk as a matter of fact, as a single unit, the way you might grab a pre-assembled piece of furniture off a shelf, rather than building it from raw wood every time. This is one of the biggest secrets of natural-sounding English, and almost nobody teaches it explicitly. The reason non-native speakers often sound slightly off, even when their grammar is technically correct and their vocabulary is impressive, is that they are building sentences word by word, while native speakers are assembling chunks. Think about the difference between these two sentences. Someone says, "This is not a problem that is small," and someone else says, "This is no small problem." Both are grammatically correct. Both mean the same thing. But one sounds like a native speaker and one does not. Why? Because no small problem is a chunk. It is a ready-made expression stored and retrieved as a unit. The first sentence is word-by-word construction. The second is chunk deployment. So if you want to think in English like a native speaker, you need to stop building sentences and start building a library of chunks. What counts as a chunk? Chunks can be idioms, expressions like, "it's not the end of the world," or "we're in the same boat," or "let's not beat around the bush." Chunks can be collocations, words that naturally go together, like make a decision, not do a decision, heavy rain, not strong rain, take a shower, not have a bath in American English, though that works in British. Chunks can be discourse markers, the phrases that structure conversation, Like, what I mean is, to be honest, the thing is, having said that, chunks can be sentence frames, structures that are always used in the same way, like, the reason I'm asking is, or what surprises me is that, or it goes without saying that. The key to working with chunks is to learn them in context and to learn them as wholes. When you encounter an idiom, do not try to analyze why each word means what it means. Just absorb the whole thing. Under the weather does not make logical sense word by word, and trying to analyze it will only confuse you. But if you accept it as a single chunk that means feeling ill, and you start using it in conversation, it will quickly become natural. Here is a practical approach for building your chunk library. Keep a chunk journal. Every time you hear or read an expression that sounds natural and interesting, write it down. Not just the phrase, but the full context, the whole sentence it appeared in, the situation in which it was used, who said it, and to whom and why. Because context is what allows a chunk to feel alive rather than memorized. Then practice using that chunk actively. Use it in your inner monologue. Use it in your next conversation. Use it when you are writing an email or a message to a friend. The goal is to get it from your conscious memory into your automatic retrieval system. And the way to do that is repetition in real contexts. Not drilling, but genuinely using the chunk to express something you actually mean. To pay special attention to high-frequency chunks. These are the expressions that native speakers use constantly, perhaps without even noticing. Things like, to be fair, at the end of the day, that being said, to be honest with you, I see where you're coming from. I didn't mean it that way. You know what I mean. Kind of, sort of, I guess. These small lubricating expressions are absolutely everywhere in natural English conversation, and they make an enormous difference to how natural you sound. If you can deploy them automatically, you will immediately sound more fluent because they signal to the listener that you are operating inside the rhythms of the language. Then another powerful category of chunks is what linguists call lexical collocations, the specific verb-noun or adjective-noun combinations that native speakers use automatically. Collocations are one of the trickiest aspects of English for non-native speakers because the choice of which word goes with which often seems arbitrary. You can make a mistake, but you commit a crime. You can do homework, but you write an essay. Rain can be heavy, but not strong. Wind can be strong, but not heavy. There is no deep logical reason for many of these. They are just the patterns of the language. And the only way to internalize them is through massive exposure. This is why reading and listening extensively in English is so important. Every time you are exposed to natural English, you are absorbing collocation patterns. Your brain is quietly noting which words appear together, how frequently, and in what contexts. And gradually, certain combinations start to feel right and others start to feel wrong. Not because you can explain the rule, but because your brain has built statistical models of the language from all that exposure. This intuitive sense of what sounds right is what native speakers have, and it is what you are building. It is not the ability to explain grammar rules. It is the ability to feel what is correct, and that feeling is built through chunks, through exposure, and through time spent inside the language. Chapter 5. The Inner Monologue, Your Secret Weapon for Fluency. Of everything we are going to cover in this masterclass, this chapter might be the one that creates the most dramatic change in your English in the shortest amount of time. Because what I am about to teach you is a technique that you can use literally every waking hour of your life, with no equipment, no teacher, no partner, and no cost whatsoever. I am talking about your inner monologue. Right now, there is a voice inside your head. It narrates your experience. It comments on things. It worries, plans, remembers, imagines, judges. It is the voice of your thinking self. And for most people learning English, that voice speaks their native language absolutely fluently, constantly, automatically, and English never enters it at all. That needs to change. And here is why it is so powerful when it does. Your inner monologue is the rehearsal space for your spoken language. When you think in words, you are practicing speaking. Every sentence that forms in your mind is a sentence that is reinforcing neural pathways, building fluency, training your brain in the rhythms and patterns of whatever language you are thinking in. If that language is always your native language, you are spending every waking moment practicing your native language and none of that time practicing English. But what if you could switch that? What if, for several hours a day, your inner voice shifted into English? How much practice would that be? How many sentences? How many words? How many grammar patterns and collocations and chunks would you be reinforcing? The amount of English practice packed into a single day of inner monologue work dwarfs anything you could do in a classroom. Now, the first thing most people say when I suggest this is, "But I don't have enough English to think in it, and I don't know the words for everything I want to think about." And that is a completely understandable concern. But here is how we handle it. You start small. You do not try to think your entire inner life in English immediately. You start with simple narration of your immediate physical experience. Right now, wherever you are, you can say to yourself in English, "I am sitting on the couch, the room is quiet, the light is coming through the window. I have a glass of water next to me. I am listening to this program about English." Simple, descriptive, present tense sentences about exactly what is happening right now. This is not difficult. You already know these words, but you are probably never using them in your inner monologue. And every time you do, you are laying down another layer of English neural circuitry. From there, you gradually expand. You start narrating your actions as you do them. While you are making coffee, you think, "I'm filling the kettle. I'm putting it on to boil. The coffee is in the cupboard. I need a clean mug." While you are walking, you think, "The street is busy. It's colder than yesterday. That car just ran a red light." While you are at work, you think, "I need to finish this report before lunch. I wonder what my boss will think of the new proposal." Then you expand further. You start using your inner monologue to process your emotions in English. Instead of feeling frustrated and thinking about it in your native language, you think, "I'm really frustrated right now. I've been trying to solve this problem for an hour and I can't figure it out. And I need to take a break and come back to it with fresh eyes." This is harder because emotions are deeply tied to your native language. Your first language is always your emotional language in some ways. But it is also incredibly powerful, because when you learn to name and process emotions in English, those emotional associations embed the language at the deepest level, then expand even further. Start thinking about abstract ideas in English. Start having imaginary conversations in English. When you are about to have a real conversation that might be difficult, a meeting, a date, a job interview, rehearse it in English in your mind first. Play both sides of the conversation. Imagine the other person's responses and respond to them. This kind of mental rehearsal is used by top athletes, musicians, and performers to prepare for high-stakes moments, and it works for language too. There is a fascinating thing that begins to happen when you commit to this practice. After a few weeks of consistent inner monologue work, you will notice that certain thoughts start arriving in English before you even consciously switch. Something funny happens, and the English phrase arrives first. You see something beautiful, and the English words come before the native language words. This is not a trick. This is your brain reorganizing itself. This is the translation habit being actively replaced by a direct English thinking habit. And this is one of the most exciting moments in a language learner's journey, you have your first dream in English. It is a sign that English has penetrated deep enough into your subconscious that it is being processed even when your conscious mind is completely offline. When that happens, something has fundamentally shifted. Now, there are common challenges with inner monologue practice, and I want to address them honestly. The first challenge is vocabulary gaps. You will frequently encounter situations where you want to think something in English and you do not know the word. Do not let this stop you. Have two options. Either describe the thing with words you do have. This is incredibly good practice and it builds the skill of circumlocution, which is one of the most important skills in real conversation. Or make a mental note of the gap and look it up later in English. Either way, keep going. Do not switch to your native language. And find a way around the gap and keep the English stream flowing. The second challenge is self-consciousness. Inner monologue work can feel strange and artificial at first. Your inner voice might say in your native language, "This is ridiculous. I sound like a child." That is completely normal. You are building a new habit in a space, your own mind, that has never been used for this before. The strangeness will pass, and what replaces it is astonishing. The third challenge is consistency. It is very easy to forget to do it. Life gets busy, you get distracted, and suddenly you realize you have been in your native language for the last 3 hours. That is fine. The moment you realize it, switch back. Do not be harsh with yourself. Building a new mental habit is not about being perfect. It is about returning to the practice again and again, then as many times as it takes. One technique that helps with consistency is to anchor the inner monologue practice to specific times or activities. Always think in English while you are making breakfast. Always think in English while you are commuting. Always think in English while you are exercising. The routine provides a trigger, and the trigger makes the habit more automatic. Your inner monologue is the most intimate and continuous practice space you will ever have.